These are the most shocking, interesting vintage photos and unusual objects from the past. Let's get 100,000 subscribers. An aerial view shows Fort Douaumont before and after the devastating Battle of Verdun. The fortress, once a symbol of strength, was reduced to ruins under relentless German and French bombardments. The battle, fought from February 21st to December 18, 1916, became the longest and bloodiest confrontation on the Western Front of the Great War. An official notice introduces the zip code system to American households, displaying the number 92335 as an example. The cheerful cartoon mascot emphasizes the importance of writing zip codes on every piece of mail to improve delivery speed. Issued in September 1967, it marked the beginning of a new era of efficiency in the U.S. Postal Service. Bahadur Shah Zafar II, the last Mughal emperor, reclines weak and frail while awaiting trial for his role in the Indian Rebellion. Once a ruler of Delhi, he had become a symbol of resistance against British authority. Captured in 1858, his downfall marked the end of the Mughal dynasty and the firm establishment of British rule in India. PFC Donald Jones of Topeka, Kansas, looks at a warning sign at the southern edge of the Korean demilitarized zone. The sign, written in English, Korean, and Chinese, was placed immediately after the armistice ending active hostilities in the Korean War. Photograph taken on July 30, 1953. Two French nuns, Alice Damon and Léonie Duquet, photographed after being arrested by the Argentine military regime. Both women were detained in Buenos Aires in December 1977 during the period known as the Dirty War. They were later disappeared, becoming part of the thousands of victims of forced abductions under the dictatorship. Jacqueline Bouvier and Senator John F. Kennedy at the Kennedy family home in Hyannisport, Massachusetts. The couple had announced their engagement earlier that month, and Life magazine sent a photographer to capture the moment. The photo was taken in June 1953. Remains of a wooden shipwreck uncovered on the coast of Florida. The structure, exposed by shifting sands and tides, is believed to date back to the 19th century. Such discoveries provide archaeologists with valuable information about shipbuilding and maritime trade of the era. View of the Chernobyl nuclear power plant from a bridge in Pripyat, Ukraine. The explosion at reactor number 4 occurred on April 26, 1986, leading to the worst nuclear accident in history. The bridge later became associated with local legends, but no official records confirm the deaths of all who stood there. Promotional birthday coupon issued by McDonald's, featuring Ronald McDonald. The card offered one free hamburger and a serving of French fries to children under 12 and adults over 65, distributed in the greater St. Louis area in the early 1960s. An elderly woman carries rolled carpets and a framed portrait while leaving the ruins of her home in Grozny, Chechnya. The photograph was taken in May 1995, during the First Chechen War, after widespread destruction of the city. Civilians were forced to abandon their belongings as fighting and bombardments devastated the area. Miss NASA poses with a rocket engine at a NASA facility. The photograph was taken in 1968, during a public relations campaign to promote the U.S. space program. Such events were part of NASA's outreach efforts in the Apollo era. A young Arnold Schwarzenegger flexes his muscles for a crowd during a street appearance in Munich, Germany. The photograph was taken in 1967, early in his bodybuilding career, before moving to the United States. Such public displays helped him gain recognition in Europe's bodybuilding community. Italian Decima Flottiglia MAS commandos used manned torpedoes, known as maiale, in a raid on the British naval base at Alexandria, Egypt. On the night of December 19, 1941, they damaged the battleships HMS Queen Elizabeth and HMS Valiant, putting both out of action for over a year. Although the Italian divers were captured, the operation was regarded as one of the most effective naval sabotage missions of the Second World War. Farmers demonstrate a wooden boat-type rice planter in a flooded paddy field. The device was designed to speed up the planting process by pushing seedlings into the mud in rows. Photograph taken in China during the 1950s. French actress Brigitte Bardot, photographed during the filming of A Very Private Affair. The movie, directed by Louis Malle, was released in 1961 and partially shot on the French Riviera, Bardot became one of the most recognizable icons of European cinema of the 1960s. Princess Elizabeth, the future Queen Elizabeth II, is carried up the steps of Balmoral Castle in Scotland. The photograph was taken in 1927 during a royal family visit to the estate. Balmoral had been a residence of the British royal family since the 19th century. Inspection card issued by the Russia-America Line for a passenger traveling aboard the steamship Russia. The document, dated August 27, 1909, includes proof of vaccination required for entry into the United States. Such cards were part of early 20th century immigration health regulations. Two contrasting images showing women in Afghanistan across different decades. The top photograph, from the 1950s, depicts women shopping at a record store in Kabul during a period of modernization. The bottom image, taken in 2016, shows a group of women wearing burqas in public under different social and political conditions. Illustration from a 1970s magazine predicting the future of electronic games. The concept envisioned players competing against each other over long distances using devices with miniature radio transmitters and liquid crystal displays. Such forecasts anticipated the development of online gaming by the year 2000. United States $5 silver certificate issued in 1899. The note features the portrait of Chief Running Antelope of the Hunkpapa Lakota, making it the only U.S. banknote to depict a Native American chief. Silver certificates were a form of paper currency, redeemable for silver coins held by the U.S. Treasury. Michael Jordan and Michael Jackson during a basketball sequence filmed for the music video Jam. The video was released in 1992 as part of Jackson's Dangerous album promotion. The collaboration brought together one of the greatest athletes and one of the most famous entertainers of the era. Soviet soldiers marched through Red Square during the military parade on November 7, 1941. The parade was held despite the German advance toward Moscow, and many of the troops went directly to the front lines from the square. It is estimated that nearly 80% of men born in the Soviet Union in 1923 did not survive the Second World War. Canadian gasoline ration coupon book issued during the Second World War. Each coupon represented 1 unit of graded gasoline, valid between 1942 and 1943. Such ration books were distributed to regulate fuel consumption and support the war effort. Jean-Paul Sartre sits at his desk, writing, with his cat resting on his arm. The photograph was taken in Paris in the 1940s. Sartre was at the height of his literary and philosophical career during this period. Package of New Era dental floss, produced by Johnson & Johnson. The spool contained 25 yards of floss and was sold in the mid-20th century. Early products like this marked the company's expansion into consumer dental hygiene. Stone Arch Bridge near Mosul, Iraq, often referred to as a Roman bridge. The photograph was taken in the 1930s by archaeologist Sir Aurel Stein during his survey work in the region. Such bridges, built in antiquity, remained in use for centuries as part of local infrastructure. Ancient Roman folding multi-tool made of silver. The device includes a spoon, knife, 3-tined fork, spike, and spatula. It dates to the 2nd century AD and demonstrates Roman innovation in portable utensils. A large crowd gathers in Berlin to watch the start of a balloon race. The event took place in 1908 during a period of growing public fascination with aviation. Balloon competitions like this showcased advances in aeronautics before the development of powered flight. Snow-covered 8th Avenue, viewed from 121st Street in New York City. The photograph was taken the day after the record-breaking snowfall of December 26, 1947, which left more than 2 feet of snow. The storm paralyzed transportation and became one of the heaviest snowfalls in the city's history. Villagers in the Altai Mountains, producing areca using a wooden distillation apparatus. The photograph was taken circa 1900. Areca was a traditional alcoholic drink among the Altai people. Soviet soldier on horseback during the war in Afghanistan. The photograph was taken in the 1980s and shows the use of horses for mobility in rural terrain. Mounted patrols supplemented armored and motorized units in difficult landscapes. 2 peasant women walk along a muddy country road covered with snow. The photo was taken in the Russian Empire in the 1910s a decade marked by poverty and upheaval in rural areas. Their heavy scarves and long coats reflect the typical winter clothing of village women of that era. Wedding of Hermann Göring and Emmy Sonnemann in Berlin, Germany. The ceremony took place on April 10, 1935, and was attended by senior Nazi officials. Adolf Hitler served as a witness at the event. Boris Vasilenko with his robots during the all-union robot competition in Kaliningrad, USSR. The photograph was taken in the 1960s, when amateur inventors presented homemade machines. Vasilenko won first place in the contest with his humanoid designs. Max Factor applies makeup to an actress in Hollywood. The photograph was taken in the United States in the 1930s. Factor was a pioneer of modern cosmetics and developed products specifically for the film industry. Ray Bradbury sells newspapers on the corner of Olympic Boulevard and Norton Avenue in Los Angeles. The photograph was taken in 1938, when Bradbury was still a teenager. Before becoming a renowned science fiction writer, he worked as a newsboy during the Great Depression. Roman surgical instruments discovered in the house of a physician in Pompeii, Italy. The tools date to the 1st century AD, and include forceps, scalpels, probes, and bone levers. Such finds illustrate the advanced state of Roman medical practice before the city's destruction in 79 AD. Actors Vladimir Ivashov and Zhana Prokorenko shopping in San Francisco. The photograph was taken in 1960 during their visit to an international film festival. They purchased their first pair of Levi's jeans while promoting the Soviet film Ballad of a Soldier. Marilyn Monroe and Arthur Miller, photographed in New York City. The image was taken in 1957. Shortly after their marriage in 1956, Monroe is seen drinking Coca-Cola during a break while surrounded by onlookers. Original Disneyland guidebook and ticket coupons from the 1950s. The coupons allowed visitors to access rides and attractions before the park introduced all-inclusive admission. Disneyland opened in Anaheim, California in July 1955 and quickly became a major cultural landmark. U.S. Boeing B-47 Stratojet taking off with the aid of rocket-assisted takeoff boosters, RATO. The jet-powered strategic bomber first flew in 1947 and became a key part of the Strategic Air Command during the Cold War. Its speed and aerodynamics made it faster than many contemporary fighter aircraft. Princess Elizabeth, later Queen Elizabeth II, served in the Auxiliary Territorial Service during World War II. She trained as a driver and mechanic in 1945, becoming the only female member of the royal family to enter military service. This photograph shows her in uniform during her wartime duties in Britain. Subway station in Buenos Aires, photographed in 1940 and 2024. The top image shows a wooden escalator and a vintage train marked Plaza Italia. The bottom image documents the same location, with modern escalators and an updated subte train, while the original mural remains visible. Fishermen and locals posing with a whale shark in Acapulco, Mexico. The photograph was taken around the 1940s, when hunting whale sharks was still legal. Today, the species is protected and classified as endangered under international law. Japanese military medical chest with medicines and instruments. The kit dates from the early Showa era, late 1920s, 1930s. Such chests were used by field medical units and contained tinctures, powders, and surgical supplies. Julia Child and Fred Rogers photographed together making spaghetti in 1974. Child was America's most famous television chef, while Rogers hosted the iconic children's program Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood. This meeting brought together two of the most recognizable public television personalities of the 20th century. Glass bottle with a handwritten note discovered under the floorboards of a house in Edinburgh. The message, dated October 6, 1887, was signed by James Ritchie and John Grieve, the craftsmen who laid the floor. The note humorously states, "They did not drink the whiskey," and leaves a trace for future finders. Construction of the Empire State Building, photographed between June and November 1930. The skyscraper rose at an unprecedented pace, with floors completed in just days. Built in under 14 months during the Great Depression, it became a symbol of modern engineering and New York City's ambition. A ceremonial knife, known as a toomey, was discovered during a house renovation. The artifact dates back to the mid-1500s and originates from pre-Columbian South America, often used in ritual sacrifices. It was found beneath a modern home built on land with historical significance. In early 20th century California, fire lookouts were stationed on tall trees to monitor for wildfires. Observers often marked their posts with American flags, making them visible from afar. This system was one of the first organized wildfire detection methods in the United States. The control room of reactor number 4 at the Chernobyl nuclear power plant in 1986 was the epicenter of the disaster. On April 26, 1986, a failed safety test triggered explosions and a catastrophic release of radiation. Today, the room is abandoned, heavily contaminated and preserved as a haunting reminder of the world's worst nuclear accident. Courtney Thorne-Smith, American actress, began her career in the mid-1980s. This photo was taken in 1986, the same year she appeared in the film Lucas. She later became widely known for her roles in Melrose Place, Ally McBeal, and According to Jim. Martha Graham was born into slavery in the United States. She lived long enough to witness emancipation and the profound societal changes that followed. By the time this photograph was taken, she was among the last surviving Americans to have personally experienced slavery. A U.S. soldier after surviving a kamikaze attack during World War II. His body was severely burned, and he is shown here undergoing treatment in a military hospital. Medical staff documented such cases as part of wartime recovery records. This is one of the first commercially available televisions, produced in the late 1920s and early 1930s. Early sets used cathode ray tubes and displayed very small, low-resolution images. These models mark the beginning of mass broadcasting and home entertainment technology. A woman in West Berlin speaks with her mother in East Berlin over the newly built Berlin Wall in the 1960s. The wall, erected in 1961, physically and ideologically divided families and communities for nearly 3 decades. It became one of the most powerful symbols of the Cold War. Shanghai, 1949. Citizens crowd banks to withdraw gold as the Communist Party closed in on the city. Fearing currency collapse, people rushed to exchange paper money for hard assets. Days later, the People's Liberation Army entered Shanghai, ending nationalist control. The first Nickelodeon theater opened in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania on June 19, 1905. It charged 5 cents for admission and showed short silent films to working-class audiences. This model spread rapidly across the United States, making movies a popular form of mass entertainment. On May 21, 1979, the White Night riots erupted in San Francisco after Dan White received a lenient 5-year sentence for killing Mayor George Moscone and gay rights leader Harvey Milk. Thousands of protesters clashed with police and attacked City Hall, causing over $1 million in damages. The event became a turning point in the LGBTQ+ rights movement in the United States. A U.S. Army Air Force's B-17 bombardier en route to Germany, 1940s. Bomber crews faced extreme risks, with survival rates dropping to as low as 20 to 50% during missions. The B-17 Flying Fortress was central to the Allied strategic bombing campaign over Europe. Robert Wadlow, photographed in 1937 at age 19, already measured 8 feet 7, 2.62 meters. He holds the record as the tallest man in history, reaching 8 feet 11, 2.72 meters, by his death in 1940. His extraordinary growth was caused by hyperplasia of the pituitary gland, Confederate States currency, issued during the American Civil War, 1861-1865, often nicknamed graybacks. These notes, printed in various denominations, were never backed by gold or silver. After the Confederacy's defeat, they became worthless, but today survive as historical artifacts and collector's items. The 96th Pennsylvania Volunteer Infantry Regiment, photographed in 1862. The regiment fought in major Civil War battles, including Antietam, Fredericksburg, Chancellorsville, and Gettysburg. Organized in 1861, it served until 1865 and suffered over 200 combat and disease-related deaths. Female codebreakers, working at Bletchley Park during World War II. Around 75% of the 10,000 staff were women. operating machines like the bomb to crack German Enigma codes. Their work provided critical intelligence, shortening the war by an estimated 2 years. The Emu War, Australia, 1932. Soldiers armed with Lewis machine guns were sent to cull emus, destroying wheat crops in Western Australia. Despite firing thousands of rounds, the emus evaded control, and the operation was deemed a failure. In 1887, journalist Nellie Bly went undercover by faking insanity to enter Blackwell's Island Asylum in New York. She documented abuse, neglect, and inhumane conditions faced by women inside. Her exposé led to public outrage and significant reforms in mental health care. In 1889, journalist Nellie Bly set out to beat Jules Verne's fictional record from Around the World in 80 Days. She traveled alone with just a small bag, completing the journey in 72 days. Her success made global headlines and established her as a pioneer for women in journalism and exploration. In 1915, Sir Ernest Shackleton's ship Endurance was crushed by Antarctic ice and sank in the Weddell Sea. His 28-man crew survived months on the ice before Shackleton led a daring 800-mile open-boat journey to South Georgia Island, securing rescue for all. In 2022, the wreck of Endurance was discovered 3,008 meters underwater, astonishingly preserved after more than a century. Benito Mussolini with his wife Rachele and 5 children in the 1930s. By then, he had ruled Italy as prime minister and dictator since 1922. His regime promoted such family photos as propaganda for fascist ideals. German soldier on a motorcycle during the Winter Campaign on the Eastern Front, 1943. He wears a gas mask and thick fur-lined gear against sub-zero temperatures. The photo reflects the brutal conditions of the Wehrmacht's war in Russia. Moscow, 1993. During the constitutional crisis, electricity and water were cut off in the Russian White House, House of Government. Deputies had to work by candlelight as the standoff between President Boris Yeltsin and the parliament escalated. This moment illustrates the peak of the September-October power struggle. England, 1909. Testing of the Brennan gyroscopic monorail locomotive, designed to balance on a single rail using large gyroscopes. Despite successful trials with passengers, the project was abandoned due to high costs and competition from conventional rail. Caucasus Mountains, December 1942. German Gebirgsjäger mountain troops rest during the Wehrmacht's campaign to seize oil fields near Baku. The operation stalled in the harsh winter terrain and was abandoned after the Soviet counteroffensive at Stalingrad. Japan, October 1st, 1964. The first Shinkansen bullet train was inaugurated on the Tokyo-Osaka line, reaching speeds of 210 km/h. The launch coincided with the Tokyo Olympics, marking the beginning of the modern era of high-speed rail. Yosemite, 1930s. Members of the Civilian Conservation Corps repair a truck as part of their New Deal work projects. The CCC, created in 1933, provided jobs for millions of young men during the Great Depression while building America's parks, roads, and infrastructure. Their work left a lasting mark on national parks like Yosemite. Vietnam, 1965. American paratroopers struggle through a flooded river during the monsoon season, carrying rifles above their heads to keep them dry. The heavy rains and flooded terrain turned even simple movements into exhausting battles, shaping the harsh reality of jungle warfare. New York City, early 1930s. Volunteers distribute food packages to unemployed families during the Great Depression. With unemployment exceeding 25%, breadlines and relief efforts became a lifeline for millions of Americans. New York City subway, 1989. Actor Kane Hodder in full Jason Voorhees costume during the filming of Friday the 13th, Part 8. Jason Takes Manhattan. The movie was the 4th consecutive installment with Hodder playing Jason, cementing him as the definitive face of the franchise. The Pony Express operated from April 1860 to October 1861, Carrying mail across nearly 2,000 miles between Missouri and California, riders traveled up to 100 miles a day, switching horses at relay stations every 10 to 15 miles. Though short-lived, it became a legendary symbol of speed and endurance in the American West. A ticket from the Beatles' Atlantic City concert on August 30th, 1964, shows the height of Beatlemania in America. The performance took place at Convention Hall, with tickets priced at $4.90. That year, the band's U.S. tour drew record-breaking crowds and cemented their global dominance in popular music. C.S. Fly's photography studio in Tombstone, Arizona, captured some of the most iconic images of the American frontier, including rare photos of Geronimo and his Apache warriors in 1886. Tombstone itself gained lasting fame as the site of the gunfight at the OK Corral in 1881. Today, both the town and Fly's work serve as enduring windows into the Wild West. A Japanese Type A mini-submarine was destroyed by U.S. forces in the Aleutian Islands in 1943 during World War II. These small submarines were part of Japan's strategy to harass American naval bases in the North Pacific. The rusted wreckage still lies abandoned on the island in 2021, a silent relic of the Aleutian Campaign. Captured Soviet Commissar, 1941. During the Eastern Front battles of World War II, a Soviet political officer was forced to speak into a German loudspeaker system. His words were directed at his surrounded comrades, urging them to surrender under the pressure of encirclement. Such psychological warfare tactics were common, aiming to break morale without further bloodshed. Paris Bookstalls, 1900 versus today. Bouquinistes have lined the Seine since the 16th century, surviving wars and revolutions. Today, nearly 200 stalls keep this Parisian tradition alive, now recognized by UNESCO. The California Gold Rush, 1848-1855, sparked by James Marshall's discovery at Sutter's Mill, it drew over 300,000 fortune seekers to California from across the world. Within just 2 years, San Francisco transformed from a small town of 1,000 into a booming city of 25,000, forever changing the American West. Basai Red Cross Certificate, 1943. This document shows support for the American Red Cross War Fund, which raised millions to provide aid to soldiers and civilians during World War II. Alongside it is a government-issued sugar purchase certificate, part of the strict rationing system that controlled scarce resources on the home front. Behind the scenes of RoboCop 2, 1990, Peter Weller returned in the 25-kilo RoboCop suit, which took hours to wear. The film expanded the dystopian saga and solidified RoboCop as a sci-fi icon. Breadline at a Franciscan church, 1930s. During the Great Depression, millions of unemployed Americans relied on churches and charities for daily meals. Food lines like this became one of the most striking symbols of the economic collapse. Reporting work in a Soviet workshop, 1920s. A young man presents completed felt boots to the workshop clerk, who records production results. Such accounting scenes were typical in early Soviet industry, where manual labor and strict record-keeping defined economic life. Katharine Hepburn on a skateboard, 1967. By 1967, Hepburn had already won 4 Academy Awards, more than any other actor at the time. Skateboarding, invented in California in the late 1950s, was just beginning to spread worldwide. The Vancouver Sun, June 1953. This front page celebrates the coronation of Queen Elizabeth II on June 2, 1953, when she was formally crowned at Westminster Abbey. Newspapers worldwide printed special editions marking the occasion, as it was the first coronation broadcast live on television. Captured German mortars, World War I. These heavy trench mortars, known as Minenwerfer, were designed by Germany for short-range bombardments against fortified positions. Allied troops often reuse captured pieces like these, turning German engineering back against its creators. Russell Kirsch with the first drum scanner for SEAC, 1957, USA. This groundbreaking device produced the world's first digital image, a 176 pixel scan of Kirsch's infant son. It marked the birth of digital imaging, laying the foundation for everything from medical scans to modern photography. Adolf Hitler met Finnish Commander-in-Chief Carl Gustaf Emil Mannerheim in June 1942 during his only visit to Finland. A hidden recording from this meeting remains one of the rare captures of Hitler's natural speaking voice. The talks highlighted Germany's push for Finnish support against the USSR, while Finland carefully guarded its independence. Traditional tattooing in Bosnia and Herzegovina, known as Sikanje or Bokanje, dates back centuries. These tattoos, often crosses and geometric symbols, were used by Catholic women, especially during Ottoman rule, to preserve identity and faith. An Ethiopian Orthodox priest blesses soldiers in 1935 during the Second Italo-Ethiopian War. The Ethiopian Church played a central role in uniting the population against Mussolini's invasion. Religious leaders often accompanied troops, offering prayers and blessings as symbols of resilience and faith in the face of foreign aggression. Linus was the longest-maned and long-tailed horse in recorded history. His mane measured over 18 feet, 5.5 meters, and his tail more than 13 feet, 4 meters. Born in the 19th century in the United States, he became a major attraction at fairs and exhibitions. A Bedouin family in Syria, 1893. Bedouins lived as nomadic tribes, moving across deserts with their herds and relying on oral traditions to preserve history and law. Their society was built on honor, hospitality, and survival skills that define life in the harsh landscapes of the Middle East. A wrap party for the first Godzilla film, Japan, 1954. After months of grueling special effects work, the cast and crew celebrated the release of what would become Japan's most iconic monster movie. The Godzilla suit actor, still in costume, joined in the fun, symbolizing the beginning of a cultural legend. USS Lexington, CV-2, after being struck by Japanese torpedoes and bombs during the Battle of the Coral Sea, May 8, 1942. The carrier suffered uncontrollable fires and explosions, forcing the crew to abandon ship. She was scuttled by U.S. destroyers, marking the first American fleet carrier lost in World War II. Ruth Muskrat, a Cherokee woman, presents President Calvin Coolidge with a book on Native American issues in 1923. The gift symbolized a plea for better education and rights for indigenous people. Coolidge later signed the Indian Citizenship Act of 1924, granting U.S. citizenship to all Native Americans. Cynthia Wood, Playboy's 1974 Playmate of the Year, poses with her U.S. spec Mercedes-Benz 450 SL R107. The luxury roadster, introduced in 1971, became an icon of 1970s style and success. Wood later gained additional fame with a role in the Oscar-winning film Apocalypse Now, 1979. Frank Mundus, the legendary Montauk shark hunter, poses with a massive great white he caught in 1966. His larger-than-life exploits inspired Peter Benchley's novel Jaws and Steven Spielberg's film adaptation. Mundus became the real-life model for the character of Captain Quint. Charles Pretty Boy Floyd was an American bank robber active during the Great Depression. He gained a Robin Hood reputation by reportedly destroying mortgage papers during robberies, helping struggling farmers. Arrested multiple times, he was killed by federal agents in Ohio in 1934. In 1858, French photographer Gaspard Félix Tourneschon, known as Nadar, captured the world's first aerial photograph. Taken from a hot air balloon over Paris, the image marked the birth of aerial photography. During World War I, Germany organized mass scrap metal collections to fuel its war industry. Civilians were urged to donate household metal items, from cookware to tools, which were melted down for weapons and equipment. the shortage of raw materials turned everyday objects into vital resources for the front. Soviet soldiers guard the newly established border with Germany in the winter of 1940. The frontier was redrawn after the Molotov-Ribbentrop Pact, which divided Eastern Europe between the two powers. Less than a year later, the same border would become the front line of Operation Barbarossa. In 1987, Caltech students pulled off a legendary prank by altering the iconic Hollywood sign to read Caltech. The stunt celebrated the Institute's annual Ditch Day, a tradition of elaborate pranks and puzzles. It remains one of the most famous sign hacks in Los Angeles history. Fidel Castro, fresh from the Cuban Revolution, appears in a rare family wedding photo, dressed in his signature fatigues. Unlike his usual public image as a fiery orator, here he blends into a private moment among relatives. Soviet soldiers moved through trenches in the ruins of Stalingrad, December 1942. The battle, one of the deadliest in history, raged for over 5 months and claimed nearly 2 million lives. This turning point on the Eastern Front marked the beginning of the German army's retreat. Marcel Pliat, a French subject from the Polynesian Islands, served in the Russian Imperial Army during World War I. By October 23, 1916, he had risen to the rank of Feldfebel and earned 2 St. George Crosses. One of his awards is believed to have been for shooting down an enemy aircraft. Moscow firefighters, 1913. Their gear included experimental protective suits and helmets designed to withstand smoke and extreme heat. The bulky designs reflect the early struggle to balance safety and mobility in firefighting. Decoy Artillery Crew, Russo-Turkish Front, 1914-1917. Soldiers used wooden mock-ups of cannons and shields to mislead enemy reconnaissance and divert fire away from real positions. Behind the scenes of Invasion of the Saucer Men, 1957. The low-budget sci-fi film became a cult classic, remembered for its oversized alien heads, campy effects, and drive-in popularity during the 1950s UFO craze. Young Jacqueline Bouvier, future First Lady Jacqueline Kennedy, photographed with her horse in New York, December 8, 1939. The swastika on her dress reflects its pre-Wounu use as a Native American good luck symbol, long before it was associated with Nazism. Catherine Hunt, the first female mayor of Colchester, England, at the official opening of the oyster season, 1925. Her election marked a milestone in British local politics. Driving simulator in Leipzig, Germany, 1926, equipped with brakes, accelerator, and clutch. It was one of the earliest devices designed to train motorists without real cars. 3 Soviet women partisans in 1942, among the nearly 1 million Soviet women who fought in World War II as snipers, medics, and resistance fighters. A decorated camel prepared for the wedding of the Sheikh of Abu Ghosh's son, Palestine, July 1904. Weddings in Ottoman Palestine served as displays of wealth and political alliances. Brides often wore the Wukayat al-Darahim, money hat, an heirloom headdress adorned with family coins. USS Tang during World War II. In 1942, U.S. submarines struggled with the faulty Mark 14 torpedo, which often failed to detonate properly. Captured Japanese records later revealed that only 109 ships, far fewer than reported, had been sunk that year by American submarines. The first commercial airline flight in the United States, January 1st, 1914. Pilot Tony Janis flew a Benoit Foftani Thur flying boat across Tampa Bay from St. Petersburg to Tampa in 23 minutes. His sole passenger, former St. Petersburg Mayor Abram Feel, left, paid $400 at auction for the ticket. Harry Houdini, the legendary escape artist, demonstrates his daring skills on July 7, 1912. Shackled in handcuffs and locked in a wooden crate, he was lowered into New York's East River, only to resurface moments later, free to the astonishment of the crowd. Orville Wright and his childhood friend Edwin H. Sines at work in the Wright Brothers Bicycle Shop, 1897. The shop not only sold and repaired bicycles, but also became the birthplace of aviation, where the Wrights honed the engineering skills that would soon carry them into the skies. Staff Sergeant Alan Magee squeezed into the cramped ball turret of a B-17 Flying Fortress during Wobbettutho. These vulnerable glass spheres, mounted under the belly of the bomber, gave gunners a 360-degree field of fire, but left little room to move or survive if the aircraft went down. Vintage Saratoga potato chips tin, St. Louis, Missouri. In the early to mid-20th century, chips were sold in decorative metal cans like this one, marketed as a party treat and stored this way to keep them fresh before the invention of modern foil bags. Court servants carried the imperial throne to the Grand Kremlin Palace during the coronation of Nicholas II in May 1896. This ceremony marked the last coronation of a Russian Tsar before the fall of the Romanov dynasty. The throne, richly decorated with gold and velvet, symbolized the absolute power of the autocracy on the eve of Russia's turbulent 20th century. An engineer works on the production of the Space Shuttle Main Engine Injector, 1977, USA. This component was responsible for mixing liquid hydrogen and liquid oxygen at extreme pressures to power the shuttle into orbit. The precision engineering behind it made the SSME one of the most advanced and reusable rocket engines of its time. Children in the Netherlands learning arithmetic with abacuses, 1930. At the time, the abacus was still widely used in European schools as a primary tool for teaching mathematics. This method emphasized visualization and manual calculation before the spread of modern calculators. Armor test of an M4 Sherman tank, WW Tweed. The photo shows penetration and impact marks from 90mm APCM-82 and other shells used to evaluate its protection. Despite its vulnerabilities, Sherman tanks formed the backbone of Allied armored forces, including Soviet Guards units. Albert Einstein plays piano at the Nara Hotel in Japan, 1922. He visited Japan during his lecture tour after receiving the Nobel Prize in Physics. Einstein was an accomplished amateur violinist and pianist, often turning to music for inspiration in science. Boys in Bratsk play billiards on a handmade table covered with an old blanket. 1967. Improvised games like this were common in post-war Soviet towns, where factory and construction families lived. The table reflects both resourcefulness and the scarcity of consumer goods in everyday Soviet life. President of Finland, Marshal Carl Gustaf Emil Mannerheim, attends a memorial service for fallen soldiers at the Helsinki Synagogue in 1944. Despite Finland's alliance with Germany during World War II, Finnish Jews served openly in the Finnish army. This moment highlighted Finland's unique stance in protecting its Jewish population even amid the war. The Seven Dwarfs from Disney's Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs board an Eastern Airlines plane for a 1937 promotional tour. This was part of Disney's nationwide campaign to market its first full-length animated feature. The film went on to become the highest-grossing sound film of its time, revolutionizing animation history. Chetnik priest Momchilo Juich during World War II, armed with a 7.92mm ZBVZ 26 light machine gun. Juich was both a Serbian Orthodox priest and a military commander, leading Chetnik detachments in occupied Yugoslavia. His forces were involved in guerrilla warfare against Axis troops and later clashed with communist partisans. Soviet female pilots push a truck through mud on their way to the airfield, 1944. These women were part of the famous Night Witches, the all-female 588th Night Bomber Regiment. Despite harsh conditions and outdated equipment, they carried out thousands of bombing missions against German forces. A Red Army cavalryman in full chemical protection gear, 1934. The image was published in the official RKKA Almanac as a demonstration of readiness for chemical warfare. Both rider and horse are covered in protective cloaks, reflecting Soviet fears of gas attacks in a future war. Jung Prashad, the largest war elephant of Maharaja Suryung Bahadur Rana, photographed in British India, 1875 and 1876. Elephants like him were symbols of military power and royal prestige in South Asia. An open-top sightseeing bus in Sochi, built on an Icarus chassis in the early 1980s, carried tourists along the Black Sea coast and became a unique example of Soviet transport that combined utility with leisure. Chewbacca costume during a filming break on the set of Star Wars, Hollywood, USA, 1976. The suit was worn by Peter Mayhew, standing 7'3" and tall. Migrant workers arriving at Kazansky railway station in Moscow, 1930. They carried simple belongings wrapped in sacks, heading to the capital for seasonal labor. This scene reflects the massive rural-to-urban migration during Soviet industrialization. Women in traditional veils gather in the streets of Baku, 1925. This moment captures the contrast between conservative customs and the Soviet push for unveiling campaigns. The scene reflects Azerbaijan's turbulent cultural transformation in the early USSR. A Soviet sniper uses a bathtub as cover during the Battle of Stalingrad, 1942. The brutal urban warfare turned every ruin into a fortress and every object into a shield. This photo embodies the resourcefulness and desperation of street fighting in one of Debyefitzky's bloodiest battles. Hitler, President Paul von Hindenburg, and Hermann Göring attend a military parade in East Prussia, 1933. This photograph marks the early consolidation of Nazi power in Germany. Just months later, Hindenburg's death would leave Hitler unchecked as Führer. The funeral of renowned sculptor Auguste Rodin took place in Meudon, France, on November 17, 1917. A cast of his masterpiece, The Thinker, stood beside his grave. Thousands gathered to honor the artist, whose work reshaped modern sculpture. T.E. Lawrence, famously known as Lawrence of Arabia, in traditional Arab dress during the Arab Revolt, 1917. A British officer, intelligence agent, and adventurer, he played a crucial role in organizing guerrilla warfare against the Ottoman Empire. His exploits made him one of the most legendary figures of World War I. A parrot seller trains his birds to sing by playing songs on a gramophone. Germany, 1935. This unusual method made the parrots more valuable and entertaining for potential buyers. A German paratrooper carries a wounded sergeant through the snow. Eastern Front, 1942. The harsh winter conditions made evacuation of the injured a brutal struggle for survival. A cosmetic procedure using a silk mask and electrodes, 1936. The machine, known as the Beauty Cult, promised skin rejuvenation and anti-aging effects through mild electrical currents. These futuristic treatments illustrate how the 1930s blended science, fashion, and early beauty technology in the pursuit of eternal youth. A German 28-32 cm Nebelwerfer, 41 multiple rocket launcher during World War II. Originally designed for chemical warfare, it was primarily used to fire high explosive and incendiary rockets. Its distinctive howling sound earned it the nickname Screaming Mimi among Allied troops. Soviet soldiers at a firing range, USSR, 1937. In the background, 3 men stand with shovels, hinting at the grim reality of executions during the Great Purge. Training and repression often coexisted side by side in Stalin's Soviet Union. Soviet engineer V. Bugrov practices lunar surface exit procedures using a full-scale mock-up of the Soviet lunar lander, 1960s. This was part of the USSR's secret manned lunar program, which competed with the American Apollo project. Although the spacecraft was never launched with cosmonauts, training like this shows how close the Soviets came to attempting a moon landing. The icebreaker Yermak frees the battleship General Admiral Apraksin from the ice trap in the Gulf of Finland, 1899. The Yermak, launched in 1898, was the world's first true Arctic icebreaker, designed to navigate heavy polar ice. This rescue demonstrated its unprecedented capabilities and marked a turning point in Russia's mastery of frozen seas. Prison photograph of New York fortune teller, women, 1934. Authorities often targeted Roma communities during the 1930s, accusing them of fraud and illegal fortune-telling. This image captures the clash between cultural traditions and strict urban laws of the era.